Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I find it easier to stand and speak, especially after that wonderful meal. My name is Dipti Bhatnagar. I co-coordinate the Climate Justice and Energy Program for Friends of the Earth International. And I'm based in Mozambique, at Friends of the Earth Mozambique. And I've been in this role for about 6.5 years. And I want to thank you for this opportunity for us to have a conversation today. So as a planet, we are facing, what I say is that we are facing interrelated crises. Of course, we hear about the climate crisis, and that's what's brought some of you here today to be at the Global Climate Action Summit. But it's not the only crisis that we're facing. We're also facing an energy crisis, because 1.1 billion people across this planet do not have access to electricity, and many, many more do not have access to clean cooking facilities. That isn't the only other crisis we're facing. We're facing a biodiversity crisis. We're facing political crises, and I think you here in the US know something about that. But, but the right-wing sweep doesn't stop here. It's going across some parts of Europe. It's in India, where I was born. It's in Brazil. It's in the Philippines. So that's another one of the interrelated crises that we're seeing. There's an unemployment crisis. We hosted an event with the International Trade Union Confederation last year, and the person who spoke starting the meeting said, there's an unemployment crisis. People are having a really hard time getting a livelihood. And lastly, we're facing an inequality crisis, because we have 42 of the richest people in the world who own the same amount of wealth as the poorest 3.7 billion people. This is a crisis of planetary proportions, and I wanted to put it all in context, that it isn't just the climate crisis. And if we really want to deal with the climate crisis, we need to be able to deal with all these other crises in an interrelated way. So the solutions to one cannot exacerbate the other crises. They need to be able to solve all of these crises. So coming to the issue of energy, so healthy energy is the track that Farhad mentioned, and we say healthy energy requires energy democracy. So we see energy as a human right. The current energy system didn't do its job. It not only created the climate crisis, but if 1.1 billion people across the planet are left without access to electricity, that system didn't do its job. It also, not only did the energy system create the climate crisis, but it has devastating impacts for local communities on the ground. So we've seen a huge amount of land grabbing, we've seen biodiversity destruction, and of course, pollution of the air, pollution of the soil, pollution of the water. So we need to do something about the way that we produce, distribute, and consume electricity. But this isn't just a technical approach. It's not just about changing the energy system, the energy source. We need to go deeper and think about changing the energy system. So that is what energy democracy to me is about. It's about ownership. So it's not just about where the source of the energy is, but who is actually owning your energy system. Who is using the energy? We've started in Friends of the Earth International talking about energy sufficiency. So there is an issue of consumption here, and of course, the amount of energy that's used here in the north, in the US, is about 30 times what a single person in the poorest countries of Africa, where I live, use. So there's a huge inequality in the way that energy is used, of course. And the third question is, what is the energy used for? In Maputo, the capital of Mozambique, where I live, we have one aluminum smelter, I think what you may call aluminum. I'm learning American. We have one aluminum smelter which uses more electricity than the entire domestic population of the country. So that's what the energy gets used for. We actually produce excess electricity in Mozambique, but we don't have a transmission system. It is sent straight to South Africa, and then we buy it back at higher costs. So our government wants to build now more dams, more coal, more gas, but it's not for the people. It's for taking to the ports and sending it out of the continent, just like the old colonial model. So what are we pushing for instead? As Cindy was saying earlier, we are putting solutions forward. We at Friends of the Earth International are working on what we call our People Power Now Good Energy Manifesto. and we're going to be releasing that in the next few months. We are calling for community-owned and controlled renewable energy solutions. It is absolutely not enough to just be renewable by source. We need to think about the ownership. It should be socially controlled. It should be governed in the public interest, not for profit. It should be using local materials as far as possible, and it should encourage local jobs, because we didn't forget that one of the crises that we're facing is unemployment and people having trouble getting livelihoods. And we need to apply, where did the People's Lens paper go? We need to apply the People's Solutions lens every time we think about what decision we want to make, what type of energy do we need, and for all of you, what type of grassroots organizing should you support? So the People's Solution lens, which Simran's going to resuscitate in a minute, who is making the decisions? Who is benefiting from that work, and how does it impact other issues? And if I may, I would add just one more, and that's something we work on quite a bit at Friends of the Earth. Does it change or challenge the existing power relations? We find that's very, very important if we are going to talk about transforming, and if we are going to talk about dealing with the interconnected crises. And I give you one really small example. We have a Friends of the Earth group in Palestine, and of course it's a place where it's extremely hard to even survive. They're facing apartheid-like conditions. But we have the group which is working with women parliamentarians to get solar panels to women in Bedouin communities so that they can refrigerate their cheese, and they can have a market for the very, very small-scale cheese that they produce. I give this example because it's challenging at multiple levels. It's dismantling patriarchy at the same time as bringing energy solutions, and that's the kind of thinking that we need to see. I'm running out of time, but I actually wanted to be a little bit provocative and mention two grants, two calls for applications that I saw recently that were a bit problematic. So to talk about when funding is going to problematic or destructive ways. And they're both European sources, so I feel a little bit okay speaking about it here. But of course, if you recognize these trends in your funding, then please do help us challenge it. The Nordic Climate Facility had a call for applications, and one of the countries listed was Mozambique. Of course, now they handpick the countries, right? This, especially international. This grant is for these countries of Africa, these of Asia, these of Latin America. Anyway, Mozambique was on the list. We had a look. We need money. This grant was about climate solutions, but it was about business viability of climate solutions. It was about commercial viability of climate solutions. And it bothered us to our core because we need collective climate solutions. We need to think about ownership. And instead, this grant was calling for individualized climate solutions, privatized climate solutions. And it was a huge problem. Another really quick example. We in Friends of the Earth Mozambique have been working in the Mabu forest, which is the largest mid-altitude rainforest in southern Africa, and it's in Mozambique. We've been working there for about 9 years. There was never any money for this work. We would do it when we went to the field, combine it with other things. All of a sudden, the European Union has now come up with grants of 250,000 euros for working in the Mabu forest. Now you tell me, what is going to happen to a community, to an area, when the money goes from 0 to 250,000 euros in an EU setup which is highly regularized and needs a lot of upkeep. So it's just two examples to talk about how destructive sometimes funding can be. And of course, we really need your help, that we don't move towards that we don't move to false solutions, which we call dangerous distractions, but rather the money goes to real grassroots solutions. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.